Korea's first heatwave advisory for this year was issued last Monday, with relevant authorities making note of the reality that the advisory comes a week earlier compared to last year. Here in the country, the advisory is announced when the daily high heat index is forecast to hit 33 degrees Celsius or above for 2 days in a row. Pundits believe Korea will witness hotter and longer heat waves this summer as a result of climate change. And this outlook has raised concerns about potential disruptions in power supply as air conditioners run around the clock. Health authorities, for their part, have pledged to assist the vulnerable who look to bear the brutal brunt of the scorching conditions. Further aggravating this reality is the fact that temperatures for June this year have been hovering well above the norm. Also, weather experts have shared concerns about torrential downpours during Korea's rainy season this summer. They predict the rain will be more intense and more frequent, as has been the case in quite a number of countries worldwide in recent times. And that being said, on today's edition of Issues and Insiders, we take a listen to the callous consequences of climate change in other parts of the globe. Hello and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Issues and Insiders. I'm Min Sunhee. As mentioned in our news clip earlier, today we share with you the impact of climate change on weather patterns in different parts of the world. For this, I have Gaurav Saini, an environment and climate reporter over in India. Gaurav, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Glad to be here, Sunny.
I also have Jan Rübel, a reporter over in Germany. Jan, it's good to have you with us as well.
Thank you.
Right, Jan, then let's begin with the floods in southern Germany earlier this month. How severe were they, and what is the current situation there?
Well, the situation has now stabilized again, and the clean work is continuing. I mean, large areas were flooded, causing major damage to agriculture. Roads and train lines were also affected. The total damage is estimated at 2 billion euros. That was a big shock, even though people had been warned. I mean, people had to be rescued by helicopter, thousands were evacuated, and 6 people died. Some are still missing.
I see. And Jan, do weather authorities believe more floods are in the forecast for Germany this summer?
Well, more extreme weather is expected this summer, so also more rainfalls. The last flood was triggered by a low that originated in the Mediterranean region. The water there is warmer than usual due to climate change, obviously, and this leads to more evaporation of water. Climate change also ensures that such low pressure areas stay in one place for longer. In other words, that more rain falls in one place. Of course, it's impossible to predict now whether this will lead to floods, but the soils are now quite saturated due to the rainfall and can no longer absorb as much. The fact that the soil is still being increasingly sealed by construction in agriculture is now taking its toll.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Gaurav, the heat wave over in India has been making headlines here in South Korea as well. I understand the mercury hit well above 50 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country. Could you tell us a bit more about the scorching weather there and its broader consequences?
Yes. India is undeniably experiences one of its hottest summers. Multiple heat waves have pushed millions in the country to their limits, and many states have reported heat-related deaths. According to the India Meteorological Department, 14 of the 36 subdivisions in India, that means almost 40% of the country, have recorded double the number of heatwave days than they usually do. In terms of temperatures, at least 37 places in India reached or surpassed 45 degrees Celsius on May 26th. Yesterday only, 26 places in North India recorded temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius. The state of Rajasthan has hit 50 degrees Celsius 2 or 3 times over the last few weeks, and Delhi has recorded temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius for 36 consecutive days. Now, speaking about consequences, according to data compiled by the National Center for Disease Control, 46 heat-related deaths and over 19,000 cases of suspected heat stroke were reported in the country in May. Officials say that this data does not include data from many states, such as the most populous state of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Delhi, and could just be the tip of the iceberg. The blistering heat has left a number of people scrambling for water. with levels in reservoirs and rivers hitting record lows. People in Delhi are battling a severe water crisis as they speak. The shortage of water for irrigation is impacting agriculture in some areas. The power grids are under immense pressure, and there has been a sharp increase in the number of short circuits and fires. Low-income households are losing a significant part of their income. This scorching heat has also impacted students' education, with the schools suspending face-to-face classes and advancing summer vacations. Experts say 15% of India's government schools do not have a functional electricity connection, and many are single classroom schools. This means heat wave affect rural education outcomes.
Right, and staying with the impact, Gaurav, what was the impact of the blistering heat on India's election, I believe, earlier this month?
Yeah, indeed, rural heat has significantly contributed to the lower voter turnout during the elections in India, which began on April 19 and ended on June 1. Mind you, these were the second longest elections after the 1951-52 polls. In fact, the Chief Election Commissioner of India said in a press conference a day before the results were announced that holding elections during hot weather was a significant challenge. Remember, the heat waves in May also resulted in the deaths of dozens of polling staff. The Chief Election Commissioner said that in 2029, the elections will be completed before the onset of summer. The Election Commission had also set up a task force to review the impact of the heat wave following the decrease in turnout in the first phase of polling on April 19. It had also sent election workers a list of heat precautions prepared by the National Disaster Management Authority. During our reporting, we observed that political parties were cautious and mostly held poll rallies before noon or in the evening when temperatures were bearable. On polling days, voters arrived at the polling booth early to avoid midday heat. Some states were better prepared to deal with the heat. They had proper arrangements for water, cooling, shade, and first aid. Some even extended voting hours to make it comfortable for people to vote. However, it was not the case everywhere. When we covered elections in Delhi, which voted on May 25th, temperatures exceeded 45 degrees in 6 locations. Some voters fainted and many people skipped voting due to the heat. We reported that many of us stood in long queues without shade for extended periods. In some places, polling booths lacked water coolers and chairs for the elderly, which worsened the impact of the heat.
Right, I can't imagine temperatures rising to above 45 degrees Celsius. Staying with the heat wave, Jan, what has been shared about the heat prospects in Europe? I mean, is Europe looking at its hottest summer this year?
Well, the expected extreme weather can also lead to heat, but not in the coming weeks. And the experts think that it is more likely to get hot in August and September. This in turn could lead to more rainfalls because the hotter the air, the more humidity it can store. Last year was the warmest year in Europe since the beginning of industrialization.
Yeah, this is an impromptu question. So Germany is looking ahead to potential more torrential rains, that is, in the summer. What measures are in place by authorities there to better deal with the potential repercussions of greater rainfall?
This is really difficult to say. It's difficult and tragic at the same time. There will be groups that will suffer most from rainfalls and heat, for example, the elderly or citizens with disabilities. But these are marginalized groups, and the state is not really thinking about how to protect them better. We've also been further in the past concerning climate change, I have to say. By example, the energy transition in Germany is making strong progress. More than half of the electricity generated in Germany comes from renewable energies such as wind and solar power. And this trend will continue. But people have become a little tired. They want to talk less about climate change. They want to be less burdened with problems in general. And there's still the war in Ukraine not far away. There is inflation. For politicians, this means that they're now also stepping on the brakes.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Gaurav, how are pundits there in India explaining the latest record-breaking heat in India?
So experts in India attribute the scorching heat to climate change and the naturally occurring El Niño phenomena, which is basically an unusual warming of the ocean surface in the central and eastern Pacific Ocean. While heat waves are common in India during April and May, scientists say climate change has made them more frequent and intense. Data shows that 12 of the warmest years in India have occurred since 2006, with 2016 experiencing the highest temperatures to date. World Weather Attribution Group said similar heat waves have become about 45 times more likely due to climate change. And Indian meteorologists have attributed the prolonged heat wave to the prevalence of anticyclones as well, and a lack of rainfall due to absence of strong western disturbances and thunderstorms. Western disturbances are cyclonic storms, as you know, originating in the Mediterranean region and beyond. These bring unseasonal rain to northwest India and adjoining parts of the country and help regulate the temperatures. According to the Indian Meteorological Department, only 2 of the 5 western disturbances that affected North India in May were active, which means this region received less snowfall and longer dry spell worsened the heat. Besides meteorological reasons, urban regions like Delhi and the adjoining areas become heat chambers due to the loss of green cover and water bodies and mindless concretization, which causes a heat multiplier effect.
Right. And geographically, Jan, Europe, it's said to be warming faster than the global average. What are experts there saying about this particular reality?
Yes, you're right. I mean, Europe has warmed twice as fast as the global average since the 1980s. Experts therefore speak of uncharted territory, so you never know what's going on or what will go on. Heat, but also rainfalls will increase. In other words, extreme weather. Researchers are finding that from the European perspective, that the bombs are getting closer. 20 years ago, hardly anyone in Europe discussed climate change. It was dismissed as a problem of small atolls in the oceans. But now it is becoming clear that everything here on this planet is connected, and there's only one way out for Europe. Carbon emissions must be reduced. Otherwise, people will suffer even more.
And Jan, are policies being fostered, framed out, that is, to ensure that carbon emissions are indeed reduced in the near future?
Yes, technology is advancing, but politics is now stepping behind. We don't have the pace we should have concerning this, because the politicians are too anxious to demand something from their voters, from the societies. And maybe we need, speaking cynically now, 1 or 2 more catastrophes in order to convince people that adapting to climate change and fighting against climate change is not something you get cheap. You really have to do something.
Right, indeed. Gaurav, speaking about catastrophes, are weather experts expecting another flood like the one that Germany saw back in 2021 that led to scores of people being killed?
See, certainly, warming climate increases the holding capacity of the air. It increases by 7%, and weather experts are now, with the El Niño phasing out and La Niña coming in, we are expecting a bountiful monsoon, which may also lead to floods, especially in the Himalayan belt, which is very fragile. We have seen floods in Rishiganga, in Uttarakhand, in Himachal Pradesh last year, which led to a loss of life. A number of properties were lost. So certainly it is, we expect that it may cause destruction during monsoons.
Right. Gaurav, what efforts then are underway in India to ease the plight faced by people amid the blistering heat?
Severe and frequent heat waves have had a bigger impact on a low-income household, we see, which often have limited capacity to deal with extreme heat due to their poor access to water and electricity. Also, the design and construction of these houses often result in poor ventilation and little shelter from heat. So the heat is testing the endurance of outdoor workers, forcing them to take frequent breaks, which leads to a loss of income. Recently, the Greenpeace India and the National Hawker Federation conducted a survey which found that over 40% of the street vendors surveyed in Delhi reported a decline in customers during heatwave days in April and May, and around 50% experienced significant income loss. Governments are ensuring that less privileged have enough water and electricity. As immediate response measures,
Gaurav? Right. I'm afraid that we've lost Gaurav's connection. So while we wait for him to be reconnected, I extend this question to Jan. Jan, this is something I'd actually asked you earlier. Back in 2021, Germany saw a flood that led to scores of people being killed. Are health experts in Germany expecting such floods to return to Germany this summer?
Yes, of course, this can happen. It's like a bet. Everybody hopes that the extreme weather will not increase, that it won't be such hot. But until now, what we have is only warning. And if you want to avoid floods, you need a long-term planning. It's not something you can react to in between 1 or 2 years, because when you have rainfalls, and you will have the rainfalls, you will have the water to go somewhere where it doesn't do any harm. And that means that you have to increase biodiversity, that you need some fresh fields at the rivers, at the river banks, where water can flow instead of going into streets and villages and towns. You need a kind of renaturalization, and this is something which needs time, and it needs money, and you need to convince a lot of people.
Right, indeed. And in the meantime then, Jan, how are authorities there seeking to tackle the summer-related heat repercussions?
Yeah, I mean, being honestly, we don't hear much about that. I mean, there are these warnings, and of course hospitals are preparing. But what do you do with the old people, with the poor, with the homeless people who are really affected by this? I mean, where shall they go? And I don't see huge programs or projects who try to tackle this problem. By example, going out and distributing water, which is very crucial in order to fight heat. But it's like everybody is really hoping that this summer won't be so hot, and this can happen. You know, what is forecasted is that there will be extreme weather, but we can't be sure that this really will be the hottest summer we ever had.
Right, I see. I suppose time will tell us then. All right, Jan, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. Meanwhile, we had Gaurav Saini joining us in our talk earlier on, but we've lost his connection owing to, I believe, a blackout in the region, in the part of the region of New Delhi that he is in. Right then, that ends this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow, that is Wednesday.